Welcome to the Stiles Council, the podcast that may or may not have shouted itself hoarse last night in the company of some like-minded individuals. My name's David Hartrick. The voice will be all over the place for the next half an hour, I'll warn you. And joining me, as ever, is my friend Christopher Nee. Chris, how are you?
Better than you by the sound of it, Dave.
I'm absolutely fine. My throat's not even sore. I've just, ridiculously, I did genuinely shout myself hoarse last night.
Did you?
In the pub. Yeah, I had a sort of last minute, I was going to watch it at home with the kid, but then she had trampoline and a couple of other things. So the wife said, go on, go to the pub, enjoy yourself. And I enjoyed myself. And it was a joyous thing, and one of my favourite things was that literally as the penalty went in, the pub just went absolutely crazy. I mean, like ridiculously mad. And I immediately FaceTimed Penny because she'd just picked Bo up. And Bo got to see us, for once FaceTime connected straight away as well. And Bo got to see a pub full of all these very suspicious looking people that she has to call uncle every now and then, jumping round, throwing lager, singing songs, and she thought it was absolutely hilarious. And at 7 years old, that's just a lovely little memory for her, really. And she's sort of completely gone now in the World Cup. She loves it. So yeah, it was absolutely brilliant. We need to sort of dissect the game and have a chat about everything, but I don't think there's any way we can't not start at the end, is there, Chris?
No, it's the obvious place to start. Winning a penalty shootout in the World Cup for the first time ever is a real moment for us. You know, it's you don't have to be that old to be able to remember endless disappointments on penalties. You know, my football memory goes back to the minute before the penalty shootout in Italy 90.
Yeah.
And since then, it's just been horrific. And, you know, that Spain shootout at Euro 96 aside, it's been one-way traffic. And
yeah,
it's difficult not to start to think like you're cursed. So, particularly the way the game went against Colombia, going into that penalty shootout with the weight of history and the weight of the evening itself on us, I just couldn't see how we were going to get through.
Yeah, I was pretty much, as you can tell from the voice, I'd been pretty vociferous throughout the game. I thought we'll get on to aspects of it, but Colombia had driven me to saying a series of four-letter words repeatedly. We got to the penalties. I thought England had shaded it overall. I thought we finished quite strongly in extra time looking for a goal. So being reasonably satisfied with the appearance, all of that adds up to losing on penalties badly, doesn't it, Chris? Because that's, as an England fan, that's how it goes. And I was so resigned to the fate. I really was, that when Henderson missed that penalty, it sounds a weird thing to say, but it just felt right.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It did, and as soon as Colombia's goal went in, for me, we were losing on penalties.
Yeah.
Extra time was going to be a non-event. As it turns out, both they and we had a couple of chances to win it in extra time.
Yeah.
But the possibility of somehow winning it on penalties just didn't enter my mind. And like you say, that Henderson miss, it was so very England at that stage. And to turn it round after that and after the goal vindicates everything you and I have said about this England side.
Yeah. Well, what I realised last night, Chris, without going off on a bit of a tangent, but last night, I mean, you know, I made no bones about it. I ended up absolutely hammered, but I had a real sort of moment when I came home and I realised that World Cups always mark something significant in my life. So 86 I fell in love with football, 90 I fell in love with England, 94 I lost my virginity, 98 was smack bang in the middle of the lost years, 2002 was Penny coming home from uni and us moving in together, 2006 was me and Penny getting married. 2010 was me and Penny deciding to have a kid. 2014 was the first with a daughter. And I was trying to think, what was this World Cup going to represent? And I realised it represents change, because me and you can sit here, watching the friendlies before the World Cup, and we can say, it feels different and this England team is different. But England in this World Cup have won in the last minute, hammered a minnow, and won a game on penalties. And that is three things that England just don't do. That's three things that other football teams do, and England have always struggled with. So it's now undeniable, isn't it? It's now, you can't refute the fact that this is different, and this World Cup represents a difference.
And a good World Cup. Because I think, having beaten Tunisia and Panama, lost in questionable circumstances to Belgium, we didn't really know what England were after the group stage. The draw had been kind to us. We had to get the job done. We did it in ways that were really pleasing. But it told us nothing. And for me, reaching par or not reaching par in this World Cup was all down to whether we got through against Colombia. And it was very possible that the England side that you and I saw wasn't the real one, and that we were just being ludicrously optimistic and just hopeful. And they went out there. I think that they bested a team that had some quality. Chose not to show it for me, but they have some quality.
We'll get on to them in a minute, don't you worry. And you might want to have the bleep machine ready.
Yeah. And we overcame adversity on the night as well. And to me, yes, it's undeniable that it now represents some kind of change in the England setup. But secondly, it confirms that the team now can come home, regardless of what happened on Saturday, regardless of what happens hopefully beyond Saturday, with their heads held high.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think to talk about the penalties individually, Kane steps up, complete sort of confidence. I'm almost at the point now where I think when it comes to penalties, Kane is just a machine, isn't he? He just goes into muscle memory mode, and I had sort of confidence with him. But then I am a massive fan of Marcus Rashford, as we all know. I was so impressed with his penalty, Chris. So impressed. I mean, not only did he get it into the right area, but he had the confidence to hit the ball like he hated it. And I absolutely loved that flying in.
It was super cocky, and I was swearing at him because I hate players messing around with their run-ups for penalties, because I think it betrays their nerves and the fact that they're not quite set, they're not comfortable. And more often than not, I'm stood there in front of the television shouting, he's going to miss. And he put me right, because it was a stonking penalty.
If that had been USA 94, mate, with those massive goal nets there, that ball would still be travelling now.
Yeah.
It was. I like. Can a penalty be goal of the tournament? Probably not. But then Henderson's obviously. There's no point sort of going over it. It wasn't that bad a penalty. I actually thought. I mean, the height. Cliche, good height for a keeper. Yeah. I actually thought it was a really good save, to be honest.
It was a fantastic save. I think the only thing with the penalty itself, yes, height, whatever, but the whole world knew where that was going. Yeah. That's the only thing about it. I think he made it... no, he didn't make it easy for Ospina, but he made it possible for Ospina.
Yeah. I was talking to an ex-professional footballer about Jordan Henderson, and we were also talking about Aaron Moy at Huddersfield Town. And he was saying that he thinks the reason he's never going to become an elite midfielder, same as Moy, is because neither of them can put a disguise on what they're doing. Okay. So when you look at them playing and they're passing, you as a spectator, you can watch and you know exactly where that ball's going every single time. So there's no element of surprise. They can't. So as a defender, it just gives you that extra half a second to set yourself and get in the right area. Whereas with a really top class central midfielder, the whole point of them being on the ball in 5 yards of space is that you do not know whether it's going left, right, or through the middle. And I thought it was a very interesting point. And I was watching last night, not just for the penalty, and it is quite true. Actually, it is true. You know, it's rarely he picks the ball up and you don't know exactly what he's going to do with it. But I don't really attach a load of blame.
No.
I just thought it was a really, really good save, me. And then obviously Trippier steps up, and that was a penalty, wasn't it?
It was the crucial penalty as well.
Yeah.
We were dead and buried had he missed that.
Yeah.
And the way he took it with such confidence and such brilliant technique, big part of what won us that shootout. Not the biggest part, but a big part. Yeah.
Blessed to be living in the time of Messi, Ronaldo and Trippier at the minute. And then the penalty that sealed it from Eric Dyer was arguably the worst of the five. Mm-hmm. I think completely understandable in the circumstances and still good enough to go in. And there's lots of I quite like there's been lots of sort of analysis of the intricacies. Pickford having the ball to give it to the England player, so there's interaction. I watched it again and I was looking at their walk-ups, and all of them take about the same amount of time. They're not bouncing a ball. They're not looking around the stadium, which was very noticeable, because when you see a lot of players walk up, they're looking, stand to the left, stand to the right. They're looking above the goal at who's behind the goal. Just a sort of, not even like a steely-eyed, completely in the zone focus, just to calm. Mm-hmm. Just to calm. And I didn't pick up on it at the time in the pub because I was watching through my fingers, but having watched it back, just so impressed at that, Chris, really. So impressed.
It's exactly what you want to see, and it's actually the only one who didn't look calm was Henderson. Which, again, I don't blame him for that either, because you can bet that is one hell of a pressurised situation. But the whole talk of owning the process, it's so believable from this England setup. It's rooted in truth, and it's bearing results.
And it was just, it didn't feel, I can't lie, Chris, and say it felt different while the penalties were going on.
No.
Because as England fans, we're completely conditioned that we are going to lose. But, having reviewed it now, I'm not going to tell you how many times I've watched them today because it would just embarrass us both. But you can see the difference. You can see the little cogs, the words, the little bit of extra time that's been spent to make sure these players know that it's not a lottery. There are things you can do, processes you can go through. And we're spending a lot of time on the penalties here, but this is, in my mind, whatever happens for the rest of the tournament, winning that penalty competition is, for me, the most significant thing England have done since probably Beckham's free kick against Greece. And when I say significant, I mean in terms of a change of course, setting your fortunes for the next couple of years. And I really do think it's that big, Chris.
I agree. It's huge in every way. Getting over the hoodoo nonsense, getting the record cleaned, putting theory into practice, and getting that experience of winning into these largely young players, and certainly ones that took the penalties. Very different to the days of Shearer, Sheringham being the first two on the list, So, and also Pickford has. That
was just what I was going to come on to.
He's got the ultimate penalty shootout experience now, because that save is as good as I've ever seen in a shootout.
Yeah, it's the course correction, isn't it, to get the arm up and save it. You can argue it's It's fairly central. You can argue it's at a good height again. But like I say, it's the course correction because he's going left and he looks like he's trying to dive low, and he immediately corrects. Get that hand up. But I thought last night, I don't buy into sort of, like Courtois slams Pickford and Pickford bites. But I don't buy into all of that. But he did look like a man with something to prove when we went into that penalty shootout, and I honestly think there was just a massive part of him that wanted to be the one.
Yeah, there was. It was interesting watching all the players talking afterwards as well to the press, particularly on ITV. And Pickford was just ice cool in the interview. And he was talking, he said, I've completely backed myself because I know I've got the power and the agility to be a good goalkeeper.
Yeah, it was good, wasn't it?
Just after that moment as well, just after doing that and making the save that he made in at the end of the 90 minutes as well. Yeah. To just be, we believe in ourselves, I believe in myself, I know what my strengths are. On we go.
Yeah. No, it was great. It was absolutely great. And it was, what was even more great was that we beat a side that, if I'm brutally honest with you, I don't want to rant, I don't want to repeat what I said about Panama, but I honestly thought Colombia were a disgrace last night for large portions of the game. I know we're going to talk about Henderson. I know we're going to talk about Maguire's dive. But I could have done with more of that from the English players because the antics of some of the Colombians were... Falcao was basically refereeing the game for about half an hour last night in the second half. Yeah. It was. I've never seen a group of players harangue a referee quite like that in my life. But the reason they did it, and I don't blame them for it, is because they realised 30 minutes into the game, hang on, we're going to get away with this, aren't we? And
yes,
whatever you think of the decisions he made, that the referee, Mr. Geiger, last night, he just was not strong enough to handle that situation. I'm not even talking elite level referees. There are championship referees who wouldn't have stood for that, Chris.
Yeah, very true. He allowed them to get away with far too much, and it was all petty crime, wasn't it? It was those horrible things. It was the scuffing of the penalty spot. It was having 8 players surrounding him, very often with aggression that would have you probably sent off in the Premier League. Certainly, Gigi Buffon will probably have a word with that referee afterwards, because he's come up against referees that have taken a very different view to Geiger's view on that kind of stuff. The Panama-style delaying of the penalty, that stuff's got to stop. The gamesmanship at penalties, and not just that, the delaying of it, the following of Harry Kane, in some of the shootouts, actually, thankfully not so much in this one, but in some of the shootouts, you've got every single penalty. The goalkeeper walks up to the edge of his 6-yard box, then takes a couple of extra steps towards a player and looks at. That's just, it has to stop. It's irritating. It's there all for gamesmanship, and I'd much rather we just got on with that sort of stuff. And it all comes from the same place. And it's the place that has decided that somehow this total lack of sportsmanship, and I don't want anybody to be an angel out there, but 3.5 minutes between a non-reviewed penalty decision and the kick being taken is embarrassing.
Yeah. And the scuffing up of the spot is, if in my mind, if you're interfering with a football pitch to gain an advantage, that's a sending off, Chris.
Ball tampering.
You can't pull the net to one side hoping the ball will go through and out the other side and the ref won't give a goal. You can't, move a line on the pitch so that you've got one penalty box that's a yard longer. It's pitiful. And I tell you what, we have decided to make this podcast swear free from the off. And I am so regretting that decision at the moment because I could properly launch it. I mean, Falcao, I've always had a lot of time for him. Last night, I tell you what, I wouldn't pull him up if he was dangling over a cliff. I completely lost it with him because I can understand getting into the referee about that marginal decision where you think you've been done by. But there was Colombian players who were tripping or going a bit further and basically hacking England players down and then claiming that it wasn't a foul. And it not only once, it was happening once a minute. Yep. And then there'd be 4 people around the referee. And it was pitiful. And listen, I'll condemn what Jordan Henderson did. Mm-hmm. Don't like it. Shouldn't have reacted. Needs to keep his head. I'll condemn what Harry Maguire did while also, caveating with, I'd have hit the deck exactly the same. Yeah, exactly the same.
He went for the situation. I'm going to dive. Oh, I've dived. Sorry.
Yes.
Approach, which is always
because I tell you, as a striker, if you get in that position and you can play for that touch there, you're always going to get that penalty if there's even the slightest touch. So you better believe I would have gone down like a building being demolished there. So no, but. Again, I'll condemn it, but you just can't defend. And the reaction, we're recording this the day after the game, and the reaction from Colombia, the claims of cheating and bias, it's absolutely pitiful to me, Chris. Pitiful.
Yeah, it's a shame after a lot of the goodwill that we enjoyed watching them 4 years ago, and our team made no contribution to the World Cup whatsoever.
I've enjoyed watching them in this tournament, and the fans have been sensational. They didn't deserve to be rewarded with that last night. That's the thing. It was awful. But right into the game itself, seeing as we're working backwards. England lineup picks itself. I'm not going to go through it because we all know it at this point. Reasonably satisfied. We knew it was going to be the same again, didn't we, Chris?
Yeah, we did.
First half, what was your sort of overview of it?
Very decent from an England point of view. I felt we were very much on top and playing some decent football without really getting them turned and really creating anything particularly meaningful in the final third. Harry Kane's contribution that set the tone for the game. I thought his hold-up play was excellent last night.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, yeah.
And it was enough to settle my nerves. I think we were enough better than Colombia that I felt good about the prospect of going through, if only we could get on the score sheet.
Yeah.
First half belonged to England.
Yeah, I thought we did okay. I didn't think we did much better than that. But I thought the difference was that we got our first team back in after the Belgian game, and we went back to the principles we've been playing now for well over 12 months, and we had a decent tempo, but the big worry remains, Chris, and going into Saturday's game and anything beyond, the big worry remains is that it is only the first half an hour against Tunisia, and then I'm not counting the game against the pub team we played after. But it's only that first half an hour against Tunisia where we've managed to carve out a string of chances, isn't it?
It is, and they're probably 50% of the chances we've created in this competition have come at that point. To take away the Panama game. So it is a concern. I think we should be mindful of not overlooking the value of set pieces, because it is a skill and it is something that we've clearly planned very, very heavily for, and we're getting our rewards for it, and they all count.
Yeah, well, Glenn Hoddle said it was the love train, but I've seen England do it before, and I've seen a few sides do it before, and it's so difficult to pick up the two men that are breaking from that system. And I think you're right. I think it feels it's almost like a goal from a set piece is a lesser goal. It's half a goal. It's not at all. If you're good at set pieces, do what you're good at. But it is a worry for me, Chris, because I just don't feel the invention is there through the centre. Henderson, I thought, was pretty good last night, all in, but he is not a creative midfielder. Henderson to me is a true central midfielder. You know, he does a little bit up top, he does a lot at the back, and he enjoys being in the middle of the park. And I think that what was noticeable to me last night is that we were struggling whenever we got Lingard or Ali on the ball. They looked good, they looked sharp, and we looked like we were going to trouble them. The problem was we just couldn't get them on the ball enough.
Yeah, and we need to get more out of them because those are the players who can create for us. I thought Jesse Lingard was one of the players who was slightly off his usual standard for me in this game, and he's another one who we can really get creation from. So it is a worry. We do need to supply those players better, and they're all sort of capable of playing well anyway. So there's no cause to drop any of them. I thought Sterling was a nuisance, and yet we're not getting production out of him. But he's playing well and making an overall contribution to the performance. And we just need to just get that little extra 10% out of those forward players. And like I say, we've got to try and get these teams turned. And Saturday's going to be exceptionally difficult in that regard.
We are both Sterling defenders.
Yeah.
We've both talked about the coverage that Sterling gets. And there are lots of issues around Raheem Sterling. Last night, I'll be honest with you, I was pretty disappointed with him. I thought he started the game really, really well, and he kept making that run in from the right-hand side, and he was clearly troubling that Colombia back line. But then he just faded so badly, Chris. I mean, second half, he just struggled to get into the game at all. And I do think that all the noise has affected him. I think it's unavoidable. I think you have to say that now, Chris. Don't get me wrong, there's no way I'm dropping him against Sweden. He starts against Sweden for me. But at the moment, he is the single most obvious substitution in that England side in any game we're playing at the moment. And I don't want to see that. I want to see him break out. I want to see him rip the heart out of that Swedish defence. You know, I just think he needs a goal, doesn't he?
He does need a goal. He's too good to just be doing a job. You get lesser players who you put in there to just do a job and to put themselves about and to give Colombia something to think about. And that's what he was doing. He's so much better than that. We need more out of him. And whether that's him, whether we can get him into the game properly, whether he's been affected by all of the crap around the outside of it all, it is there. And we need to get him off the mark in order to get 100% out of him. I totally agree.
The thing is, Chris, I lived through the perpetual focus on Chris Waddle and John Barnes, and why aren't we getting the same out of them at international level that we are at club level? And that is what the Sterling situation most reminds me of, particularly with Chris Waddle, because Waddle was the one that he was at times utterly dazzling for England, but then for large spells, 5 or 6 games in a row, completely anonymous. And I just feel like Sterling, it is unavoidable that the amount of crap that has been thrown at him is always going to affect you. And I feel for him. I think he just needs that goal. But into the second half, we get the penalty. There's no point going over the bits and bobs with it. Absolute definite penalty. I mean, he was trying to ride him, basically.
Yeah, well, I spend a lot of time around Aston Villa, Dave, and I am not surprised whatsoever.
It was just like a proper brainless piece of defending, wasn't it?
Yeah, and he made sure. That was what was so silly about it. There was one foul, there was another foul, and then he jumped on top of him.
But I am convinced, I don't think they did it before the Tunisia game, but I am convinced that a couple of key players in that England set-piece routine have worked on essentially planting themselves face first right into the chest of the defender in front of him, basically sacrificed themselves on the set piece in the hope that they're going to get dragged down. And if they do, they claim for the penalty. If not, they don't try it again. They go, right, all right, we've got somebody who's clued up to it. But I thought it was so noticeable last night that right from the first set piece, there were a couple of players who were really getting into the referee straight away, English players, and saying, look, look what he's doing. And it just felt like a penalty that was always coming.
We're all very nicey and complaining about Colombia, but we've got just that little streak, haven't we? That's, for me, really pleasing to see. Because it doesn't cross the line, but we're not out there to be bullied by anyone.
No. I mean, we are not absolute toilets like Colombia acted for a good chunk of that game last night, or like Panama tried to set about us. But we're a bog brush. If we're not a toilet, we're a bog brush.
Fair enough.
We like to just dip in there now and then, don't we? And just, when it suits. And I'm very happy about that, Chris, because as I said, I wouldn't like to see England employ that against a team who aren't like that, who aren't giving them constant grief. But if you're getting the amount of jip you were last night, and if you're getting Colombian players in your ear constantly, give them a bit back. Absolutely give them a bit back. And I'd have loved to have played in that game last night. I mean, I'd been sent off within seconds of coming on, but I'd have loved to have gone out there. But there's two things left to analyse for me here, Chris. There's the Colombia goal, but before that, there's the Dyer substitution.
Yeah.
And we straight away on our little WhatsApp group, me, you, and Football 365 legend Daniel Story, all immediately said the same thing, which was, don't sit deep now you've got Dyer and Henderson together as a two. And what happened, mate?
We sat deep, and Eric Dyer had a very poor game.
Yeah. We allowed them back into that game. We brought them on. I know Ali was struggling quite clearly, but it was working, and it was such a massive tactical shift, wasn't it?
There was so much evidence of the game that had happened to that point that really showed how stupid an idea it was to sit back. And I don't think it was deliberate. I think a like-for-like change or a more attacking change would have been even more silly. So you make the sensible substitution, the substitution that is the obvious one at that point, but you need the players to have the discipline to understand the situation. Not being an elite footballer, I can't get myself into the mindset where you just feel the pressure to the extent that you have to sit back like that when you know objectively that what you need to do is at the very least continue to carry a threat. Yeah. You see, I slightly disagree in terms of your thinking with the substitution, because that Colombia back four was absolutely ragged at the time. Well, I mean, I would argue it was a back six, really. Yeah.
They were ragged at the time. They were on the edge. And it would have been ballsy, but I would have chucked Rashford on, because I think he would have had 10 minutes running at them, and he would have profited with at least one red card and possibly set up one or two big chances as well.
Yeah, I don't think there's loads in it. I think 5 or 10 minutes earlier, that is the substitution. Because I think we have a bit of ambition about us. But so late, it would have been beyond ballsy.
And I think it's important in this podcast, we are pro what England are doing.
Yeah.
We both like this team. We both like Southgate. But I think it's important to point out where I hope Southgate has learned from that. I hope he's realised something there, because it's the old England that get drawn deeper and deeper and deeper. whether it's a 3 at the back, a 2 at the back, a 4-4-2, whatever it is, it's the old England that get themselves into a position in the game, as you know, Chris, particularly in knockout games, and then just go further and further and further back into their shell to the point where the pressure becomes incessant. And I was really disappointed. The other noticeable thing was that when Dyer came on, Henderson immediately hit 3 or 4 long.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that was an instruction. I'm not laying into Henderson for that. That may well have been an instruction from the bench to basically just get distance. But it was noticeable how when Dyer came on, the whole axis shifted. And we got it back in the extra time, didn't we? We finished very strongly.
In the second period, yeah. It was really... I was so worried at half-time in that because Colombia had been all over us.
Yeah.
And the steel that it must have taken to get to half-time, take a breath and go out and try and win the game is just incredible.
Yeah. So, goal we concede, done on a set piece after, magnificent save from Pickford, but I know this is sacrilege to say it. He was going wide, that shot, but, brilliant save. Absolutely brilliant save. Trippier on the line. Unfortunately, he just wasn't 6 inches taller, was he?
Yeah. Do you know what? Again, he spoke to ITV after the game and was talking about what he thought was going to happen. He took the responsibility for it and just said, I wasn't expecting him to head it down. So it dropped down and bounced over him, and he was expecting it to head straight for the post. So, unfortunate, these things happen. I think ultimately, yes, that's what he's there for on the line, and he should have done better with it. But we got done by a big lad.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to, isn't it? The header as well. I think what Trippier was expecting was if he'd have actually got the header right. If you watch it back, he doesn't quite time his header right, which is why he ends up he goes slightly too soon, and why it heads it so dramatically into the ground, and you get that bounce up. So I can't really attach much blame apart from, as I said, it was the tactical shift and going deeper and deeper and drawing them on that was the issue. No sort of blame on the individual incident for me. So, game done, penalties done. What's happening Saturday?
A horrible mess of a football match.
It's gonna be a grim game, isn't it? Unless either side scores particularly early. And if Sweden score early, we're done for because they will just shut up shop in a fashion that you won't believe.
Yeah.
But
I actually think, although we do need the set pieces to actually get us over the line, I think we're better equipped than Switzerland to deal with Sweden if we get it right. Because I think we can get into the final third and win stuff. But the game between Sweden and Switzerland was an absolute stinker because tactics. And those tactics are not going to change. They don't want the ball.
No, they don't want the ball. That's the thing. They want to do all of their work with the ball.
Yeah. Well, thing is, Dave,
worth looking.
Friendly against Nigeria, they didn't want the ball first half. Friendly against Costa Rica, they didn't want the ball at all. Tunisia didn't want the ball. We got early goals in those games.
I just think it's going to be a really grim 90 minutes. I think it's definitely going to go to extra time, and I think we're definitely going to go out on penalties, but that's because I'm an England fan, and pessimism is what we do. But Sweden are so compact. They're 4-4-2 without getting all tactical Johnny. They have absolutely no stars. Marcus Berg scored like 1 million goals in the United Arab Emirates last season, but they have no real stars. It is a proper collective effort. And at any one time on Saturday, when you get a chance to see it, when Pickford rolls the ball out to an England defender, if you look at the rest of the pitch, you will genuinely see a proper 2, a proper 4, and a proper 4. They are so rigid and compact. And that any team in the world is going to struggle to break them down. But there are better teams than England, I think, who would struggle. So yeah. I am. It is not the bye that the Sun newspaper would have you believe.
It absolutely isn't. I'm encouraged merely by the fact that that level of going back to basics has a lid, and this could be where they reach the end of it, and so someone is going to score against them.
Yeah,
and that'll be that because they don't have it in them. I don't think at this stage in the competition to come back from going behind.
Yeah,
and it may be a semi-final, but how many teams that play that way, where that is their biggest virtue, actually make the semi-final of a World Cup?
Yeah, I would again. I'm way too bold and a tactical buffoon, but I would wind England up on Saturday afternoon and I'd tell them for half an hour, you've got to try and Liverpool them.
Yep.
Just try and swarm them, swamp them, get over them, because I tell you what, a goal in that first half hour completely changes Sweden. If Sweden have to come out and play and try and find a goal, they're done for. They're done for. So I'm nervous. I'm nervous. If we go out to a sort of generational performance from Sweden, then I'll be honest with you, I'm probably not going to have any complaints, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. But anyway, 40 minutes in, Bo's still excited. My voice literally can't go on any longer. So we will speak to you, or perhaps Chris will speak to you on his own after the Sweden game at some point. All right. We are now on Twitter. We have our own dedicated Twitter account, and it is the snappily titled @EnglandPodcast. I am on Twitter @David Hartrick. Chris is on Twitter you. Have you just changed your handle?
No, Chris MD.
Chris MD, right. And also you can find all our stuff and gubbins on the Sphinx Football Network website and @Sphinx FTBL, isn't it, on Twitter?
It is.
Thanks for joining us. Keep your fingers crossed and don't shout yourself hoarse like this idiot did. See you there.
See ya.